Hello and welcome to Bite-Sized Bits, a segment created by the Think Tank Writing Center where we offer writing tips, techniques, and explanations to you. Today we're going to talk about thesis statements, what they are, what a thesis statement should include, and different kinds of theses you might encounter in your academic writing. A thesis statement is a sentence, or a few sentences, usually placed at the end of an introduction paragraph, that conveys the main idea or claim of a piece of writing. A thesis allows the author to present the document's purpose while providing the reader with an outline or preview of the major aspects that the piece of writing will address. One way to think about a thesis statement is like a backbone. A spine holds a body together and connects all its many pieces, legs, arms, head, and other body parts that stem from the backbone help give the body its shape, but they wouldn't hang together without a central organizing structure, the spine. The backbone of a piece of writing helps provide a structure for the various bits of evidence you present, the limbs or body parts of your argument. In other words, there's a sort of anatomy to your document that is all held together by the thesis. That said, thesis statements appear in different forms and do slightly different things depending on what style of writing you're doing. Let's discuss three types that we see a lot in academic writing: explanatory, analytical, and argumentative. Then, we will walk you through creating a thesis from an argumentative standpoint. An explanatory thesis will state factual information. The argument that this kind of thesis is making is not explicit in the way that it is when you're trying to convince a reader of something. If you're writing an explanatory thesis, your paper should aim to educate rather than argue. You might write an explanatory essay to document a historical event or to explain a scientific process, for example. An example of an explanatory thesis would be, the Great Depression, one of the worst economic downturns in history, was caused by the stock market crash of 1929, banking panics, and a reduction in global trade. An analytical thesis will offer the writer's interpretations of a particular work or a general topic. This kind of writing relies on the author's deep reading or analysis that typically looks beyond what is readily visible in the text or the work. The subject of the analysis, a film, a piece of literature, or a societal issue, for example, is broken down into smaller parts that can be closely examined and evaluated. You might write an analytical essay for courses in the humanities or social sciences. An example of an analytical thesis would be, though Chaucer's wife of Bath character boasts of her authority, seeming to challenge the role of women in the Middle Ages, Chaucer's subtle use of verb tense, allusions, and end-stopped lines suggests that the wife's self-portrayal is actually a facade. Lastly, an argumentative thesis stakes a claim that is debatable and is backed by evidence that supports one side of an argument or discussion. In other words, it takes a position that can be defended. If you're writing an argumentative thesis, your paper should defend the claim you stake in your thesis. You might run into this style of writing in law, philosophy, literature, or politics courses, among others, where you are asked to take a position on a topic. Let's take a deeper dive into thinking about how you might begin writing an argumentative thesis. Say you are required to write an argumentative paper for your animal sciences class. Your instructor asks you to address the following prompt. Should humans take steps to protect endangered animals and plants? Why or why not? Support your argument with evidence. To return to our spine analogy, you know your essay needs a backbone, a central organizing structure that articulates your main argument and connects all of your evidence. In order to organize and connect our evidence, we first need to know what that evidence is. In other words, before we can articulate our argument, we must first determine the evidence we will use. You start by doing some research on your topic and learn that when a species is endangered, the entire ecosystem is out of balance. An imbalanced ecosystem negatively impacts all species, including humans, that rely on that ecosystem. You conclude that human intervention could help to create ecological stability, one piece of evidence you might use. Through your research, you also learn that more than half of all prescribed medicine comes from plants. If certain plant species go extinct, the medical field will be impacted, and illnesses may not be able to be prevented or cured. You conclude that human intervention could help ensure that plants continue being used for medicinal purposes, another piece of evidence you might use. Your evidence points you in the direction of, yes, humans should take steps to protect endangered species. As you write your thesis, you keep in mind that it should both convey your essay's claim, as well as provide your reader with an outline of how it will address this claim. Your thesis statement might end up looking something like this. Humans should take steps to protect endangered species because they can both help create ecological stability, which benefits all species, and we can prevent illnesses that plants are used to cure. So just remember, help the reader understand the anatomy of your argument, whether you're ultimately trying to guide them through some information on a particular topic or making an argument for something. That way, the body of your paper can stand on its own. Happy thesising!